Hi, welcome to another midweek message. In John chapter 20, beginning in verse 30, John wrote, "Therefore many other signs Jesus also performed in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. But these have been written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in his name." The 7 signs, the 7 miracles of Jesus recorded in John's gospel account are not the only miracles that Jesus performed during his earthly life. There are many others that are recorded in the gospel accounts of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. But John specifically records 7 around which he structured his gospel account. 7 around which he structured his gospel account, recording and preserving them to produce faith in his readers, and that on the basis of that faith, the faith in Jesus as the Christ, the Son of the living God, a faith that would submit to him as such, that faith would produce in John's readers ultimately eternal life. The 6th of those 7 miracles is recorded in John chapter 9, and it is the longest account of any one of the 7 miracles. That is, there are more details recorded than most of the others. In John chapter 9, Jesus was in the city of Jerusalem for a feast of the Jews. He had previously done some teaching and had experienced rejection and even threats as a consequence. But in John chapter 9, Jesus was proceeding along and he saw a man who had been blind since his birth. Jesus proceeded to spit on the ground and to make clay with the spittle, to apply the clay to the man's eyes, and to tell him to go wash in the pool of Siloam. This man went and washed, and when he came back, he could see. This miracle caused a great stir among those who observed it. They had seen this man who had been born blind, formerly sitting begging for alms, and yet now here he is able to see. Some were questioning whether or not it was even the same man, but this man to whom sight had been given assured them that he was in fact the one who had been born blind. They asked him how it was that he had received the sight, and he simply related the facts of what Jesus had done. The problem from the Jewish leaders' perspective was that Jesus had performed this miracle on a Sabbath day, and wanting adjudication of the right or wrong of this matter, to determine exactly the truth concerning this miracle performed on a Sabbath day, the Jews took this man who had been born blind before the Pharisees. Again, they asked him what happened, and he related the events again. This caused a great deal of consternation because a miracle had been performed, but it had been performed on the Sabbath day. And so they asked this man, "What do you say about this Jesus?" The man's response was, "He's obviously a prophet." Again, this causes great consternation, and the Jews must refute this position. It must repudiate this idea that Jesus is a prophet because he's, from their perspective, violated the Sabbath. And so they call in this man's parents. They ask, "Is this your son? Was he born blind? How does he now see?" The parents confirm that in fact he is their son, that he was in fact born blind, but they refuse to answer how it was that he came to see. The text tells us they refused out of fear, fearing that if they confessed Jesus as the Christ, they would be put out of the synagogue, as the threat had already been issued. Again, the Pharisees called in for a second time the man who had been born blind, to whom Jesus had given sight, and saying, we know he's a sinner. He's violated the will of God regarding the Sabbath. There is no patience for this accusation on the part of the man who had been born blind. He understands that this man has performed a miracle, and no one could possibly do such a miracle without the endorsement and pleasure of God. And if he receives the endorsement and pleasure of God, he can't possibly be a sinner. When this man begins to expose the hypocrisy of the accusers, they accuse him of sin and cast him out. When Jesus learned about all of these things, he sought out the man again and asked him, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" At this point, the man's faith is ready to accept the full, complete truth of Jesus. He asked, "Who is he, Lord, that I may believe in him?" And Jesus said to him, "You have both seen him, and he is the one who is talking to you." And he said, "Lord, I believe." And in the end, the only one in this story who could truly see was a man who had previously been born blind. What do we learn from this sixth of Jesus' miracles recorded in John's gospel account? First, we see Jesus' miraculous power over both nature and time. That is, he who created both has the power over both. The man had been born blind not because of his sin or the sin of his parents. The man had simply been the victim of, we would say, circumstances, happenstance. Jesus saw this as an opportunity for the glory of God to be manifested. Jesus demonstrates his power over the course of nature. And this man had grown to be a man, an adult, having suffered blindness since his birth. A number of years, an unspecified number of years, had transpired. Jesus has power over both. And in demonstrating that power, he confirms his deity as the Christ, the Son of God. Second, we learn importantly the danger of religious prejudice. The Jews, particularly the Jewish leadership in this story, could not possibly get past their prejudice against Jesus, their preconceptions about Sabbath law, to even contemplate the reality of the evidence before them. The evidence that confirmed the identity and power of Jesus, the miraculous thing that had taken place in the provision of sight for one who had been born blind. Religious prejudice is a powerful and dangerous thing. It can blind us to seeing the clear evidence that's recorded for us concerning Jesus and his will. We must be on our guard. We also learned, third, the danger of fear. The man's parents were unwilling to confess that it was Jesus who had given sight to their son, because they feared the religious consequences imposed by the Jewish leadership. Sometimes fear can paralyze us from confessing and doing what we know we ought to be doing according to the will of God. Number 4, we observe in the man born blind the development of genuine faith. He began only acknowledging that it was a man named Jesus. But as he further processed the information, he came to understand that this man was obviously a prophet, a spokesman of God. Furthermore, as he contemplated the evidence, as his circumstances were challenged again and again, he said, "This man is certainly from God." And when Jesus confronts him finally, he is ready to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of Man, and he comes to call him Lord. Grows from a position of only knowing him as a person and his name to coming to know him as the one to whom he is going to submit his life in discipleship. That's the development of genuine faith. We grow from the point of an intellectual understanding about the identity of Jesus to where our will and emotion are impacted to the point that we'll surrender to him. This teaches us, number 5, the nature of genuine faith. A faith that is willing to surrender. When Jesus told this man to go to the pool of Siloam and wash, he did so, no doubt, in a desperate hope that some good might come of it. But he ultimately arrives at the point of calling Jesus Lord, that is, Master, and of following him. Finally, Jesus says this teaches us that he is the light of the world. Jesus is the one who provides true enlightenment. He is the one who opens the eyes of those who are spiritually blind. He's the one who guides us out of darkness and into the light of the Lord. He's the one who will rescue us from the domain of Satan's darkness and usher us into the kingdom of his eternal light. Jesus opened the eyes of a man born blind, and if we will allow him, he will open our eyes, the eyes of our heart enlightened, to know him as Jesus, the Christ, the Son of the living God, and on the basis of that faith, to surrender our lives to him now so that we may spend our lives with him in eternity. Thanks so much for watching, and join us again next week as we consider the 7th of the 7 signs in John's Gospel account.